Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to today's conversation on Gift of Healing TV. I'm Sarah Jane, and I am delighted to be joined by my two co-hosts, Scott, hi.
Hi.
And Alessio, hello.
Hi.
And our guest, Anna Thomas. I am going to hand over at this point to Alessio, as Anna Thomas is Alessio's guest for our program this evening, which is burnout seen through an IFS lens. So, Alessio, over to you and to Anna Thomas.
Thank you so much, Sarah Jane. And our guest today is none other than my dear colleague and friend, Dr. Anna Thomas Tisling, an IFS, which stands for Internal Family Systems therapist and trainer based in the Netherlands. Anna Thomas works at the intersection of internal family systems, gender and sexuality, and they are one of my collaborators in the ongoing work of Queer in IFS. Thank you very much, Anna Thomas, for being part of it. IFS is a therapeutic model that we're both trained in. One of the things I love personally about the work is that it's deeply personal, and so much deep listening to the exhaustion-driven parts of ourselves and real care. And also Anna Thomas introduces this political aspect, asking which systems give our parts certain jobs. Before Anna Thomas found IFS, they were a history professor and gradually started training scholars to befriend their self-defeating dynamics in creative ways. And Anna Thomas has helped many of these scholars get to know the parts of them that we call inner procrastinators, defensive pessimists, and imposters. And Anna Thomas tends to lead their work with the question, not just what happened to you, but what world happened to you. So, getting back to today. So, Anna Thomas, we're going to go into a conversation about burnout from an IFS lens, but let's start with something more personal, because, burnout isn't just a topic that you guide others in, but maybe something that you've experienced. So how has burnout shown up as a theme in your life, if you don't mind starting with that?
No, I'm glad to start in that very personal manner, and thank you also for introducing me to your audience and this gathering. And I would say I have my diploma in burnout. I really earned my degree, and from a really young age, I learned through my own internal family systems therapy, so my own therapy that I received and could really heal from, let's say, one of the self-defeating dynamics that I'm very familiar with is subjective overachieving. So maybe that kind of resonates. Some people procrastinate. I know that as well. But my system really from a very young age started to earn their spot in the family back home. And I can hear from my voice that it's already moving me, that I really learned from a very young age that my mother, who I love dearly and who loves me dearly, but she didn't register that I'm a non-binary child. So as I was 2, I had a brother, and I got to wear the clothes of my brother. That was a really cool phase in my life. But then my little sister was born, and then suddenly I got socialized as a girl as well. And that has been a very alienating way of being raised, because I really did not identify as a girl primarily. So what I did as a child is overachieve. So if my mother can't recognize me, if there's no spot for me, so there was this exile belief, if I can't be seen by the people who matter most to me, then probably there's no point being, for me being here. So if there's no point of me being here, oh my God, then I need to earn my spot in my family, right? And I recently, my parents are now in a phase where they are moving house. And my father gave me school cards, so report cards from when I was 7, and I read them, and they kind of break your heart. So this teacher already wrote this, Mark, don't panic if you don't get it in one go. And that is actually something. So as a child, I overachieved. I had in IFS, we kind of distinguish between managers who are very proactive and really want to prevent pain. So I had a very managerial system that was working hard all the time. Well, you get why I earned my degree in burnout, right? But so overachieving, but really to prevent having to feel the pain that there's no spot in this world for me. And not to spotlight you, Sara, at this point, but when a host kind of opens the audience with "Dear ladies and gentlemen," then actually that is already, and it's not but to kind of have you as a witness. That is something for me that is a very daily experience. So that there's a lot of access fatigue, and kind of having to subtitle who I am, that I'm not a man, I'm also not a woman, I'm a human being, let's say. So earning my spot, really being mirrored that spaces are not designed with me in mind. My family wasn't, school wasn't, most social situations aren't. So that led to a lot of overachieving and depletion. And then in the end, 2 times, a real cool firefighter, that kind of is the part that kind of comes in and doesn't care about the paintings on the wall. They just come in and they kind of extinguish the fire, right? And that was kind of a firefighter that kind of stopped me from being able to read. Well, as a scholar, you can imagine that's a problem. If you can't read, that's a problem. So that was my first go. That was really debilitating and really scary for me as a scholar. And now the second time, and that's when I learned IFS. So IFS to me is a lifesaver. This is 4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago. Again, this burnout, because I can endure a lot and I can be very managerial for a long time. But then a same guardian in my system kind of stopped me, and I couldn't even read the clock. I couldn't even read the time, which is the weirdest thing to be experiencing, right? So I know burnout as a quite sort of, enduring, and then full stop. So not being able to read the time, not remembering people's names, really feeling that I had early dementia. And then I met you, Alessio. And look at me, the poster child for IFS, right? I'm alive. But this is through internal relationships with all of those parts that I had to kind of hide, or I had to suppress, or I needed to keep out of sight, because it is kind of a hard thing to navigate this world as a non-binary person.
Can I add in here? Thank you for that. And I apologize, because I have learned so much from my youngest sister in respect of neurodiversity and, writing books, etc., and how things are made so much easier for people when you understand what they can cope with and what they can't. Dyslexia, ADHD, autism spectrum, sort of complex PTSD, and then other things within her life to do with health and well-being. So listening to you, it's just adding, if you like, another dimension to that, of accepting that we are all unique and we're meant to be unique, and we're special within our uniqueness. That's every single one of us. Although I very rarely ever met him, I grew up with a godfather who was gay. and a godmother who was a nun. Talk about contradiction in terms. But so I've always been open to everything and never mean to make life difficult for people. But I totally get where you're coming from. But I also understand from my own life in respect of not feeling I fitted in within my own family because of circumstances, not because of how I was, but of circumstances and how that created me, and my insecurities. So I'm hearing you. I really am hearing you, but from a different perspective. So yes, I've got to think about my opening, haven't I? because I don't wish to offend or exclude anybody. That's not who and how I feel I am. So I am very grateful to you, and I hope that people who listen to this will be as open. I suppose my sister, with the way things are with her, and the fact that, I've obviously got aspects of dyslexia as well, potentially complex PTSD.
Yeah,
it's being open to our differences, but they shouldn't exclude us from anything.
Yeah, right. And I love that sentiment. And so that is like what individual people can do. And then we live in this culture, and that kind of steers us towards binary thinking, right? Even if you think of buildings and that they have binary bathrooms, so where do I go, right? That type of thing. So at a meso level, one level up, we're all really invited not to think of people like me, right? Not in our language, not in our mind. And that I feel created this world that I was born into, where I now can really feel in relationship with these young parts of mine that we're in this world, but we're not of this world. And not to say that I'm, that the world has no impact on me or that I want to leave the world. That's all not the case anymore, because of course, the thought of leaving this world and then be done with it was also attractive at a certain point. And let's be in this world and not of this world. And maybe we can all relate to that, because I feel that a dominant culture has impact on all of our systems, whether we're cisgender men or cisgender women or queer people or non-binary people, transgender people. I feel that we all get impact from that dominant culture.
I can understand that part of it. My question would be, in the overwhelm, we just Alessio and Sarah Jane were in a book that I led called From Burnout to Burning Bright, and they did incredible work, by the way. And burnout takes so many different forms, and it really struck me that it impacted you so physically and mentally that it overrode your ability to. You're obviously very educated, doctor, and obviously you have high capacity, but to be able to not be able to read, it's wow.
Yeah, and that was really like this emergency break in my system that really said, hey, you've been self-erasing. So there, I know the theme of self-erasure in availability. So if I please you, so if I please you, or you're pleased, or you appreciate my work or whatever. That was a very young dynamic in my system for a long time, and then the being unable to read, that was really kind of the emergency break in my system to really get my attention. Stop doing this. This is unhealthy. This is not what you're supposed to do. So I got kind of 2 rounds of subjective overachieving myself into erasure, really ending up in an ambulance at a certain point from overworking. And then my whole body was healthy. So the doctors really told me, hey, good news, you're very fit. And bad news, something went very wrong with your behavior. And so that was a wake-up call. But then I did it again, because as long as our parts are not updated, that they can work with ourself, with the shining bright version from burning out to burning bright, so that burning bright has had that's who we truly are, let's say.
Right.
But our young parts that kind of attune to a world where they, in my case, they felt they needed to earn their spot. It wasn't God given. My mother didn't even recognize me in who I was, as in my gender identity, and then in my adolescence, I wasn't mirrored in my sexual identity. So I grew up in, let's say, a foreign sexual language, and I had to kind of find the people to learn and speak the language of Eros with, because I wasn't taught. I wasn't taught by the media. I wasn't taught at home. I wasn't taught in school. So that has been a quite alienating journey, and also quite isolated journey, I would say. And Alessio, I don't know whether you can chip in, whether you recognize this, but I feel that is still the world for queer kids today. And I work with queer kids as well in my volunteer job. And I really see that level of isolation and not understanding yourself, and just not having the language to really understand yourself.
Yes, thank you, Anna Thomas. Thank you for sharing what you are with us, with the world, with the viewers, listeners. It's really touching to hear your experience, and also how much you've learned from them, and how you can present them in a way that certainly I understand, and that we share identities and experiences, but also maybe people who don't have exactly the same experiences can really resonate with the burnout that we talked about with Scott, and in the book, and how it takes so many different forms. And in particular, I think what's in common with all burnouts, I would say, is this sense of overachieving, overcompensating almost comes to mind when I hear your story of this little kid who couldn't find community, couldn't find anybody like them. It was always different. You're different to me, you're different to me, and I cannot be on my own, so I need to change, and I need to overachieve to impress family, school, or I need to mask or forget about parts of myself so that I can be with you, because I don't want to be on my own. And then that becomes a mantra, becomes a habit, and becomes a way of life, until we end up in an ambulance.
Yeah.
How tragic. And so, just really, how is that landing on you?
I'm kind of realizing how much actually is around not being in touch with your Eros energy, and how I kind of exiled my whole sexual identity, and then became, so for a long time I lived in, so what Scott says, right, very scholarly, very educated, I lived in this part of my body. Yeah. And it was very scary to kind of drop down and really start feeling my feelings. And I'm very grateful that I learned, that I got emotionally literate. And that was actually also the bridge where I could invite other scholars. So I brought the knowledge that I gained from other traditions of wisdom, and I kind of invited scholars to get curious. And I sold it like emotional literacy. Then it's cool, right, for nerds. So and just to kind of meet the people that I worked with back then, where they were at, and just also really honoring how scary actually for most scholars, irrespective of their gender identities and their sexual identities, how for most scholars feelings are so scary. And that we all felt, what we recognized together is how easily we would feel overwhelmed. And actually, through IFS and how I got trained by Alessio, by you, and I'm forever grateful that you were one of my teachers a couple of years ago. What I learned was that when we feel this overwhelm, that's actually the exiled energy that kind of, when it kind of gets through the protection of managers and firefighters, it kind of becomes this flood, right? And that's really scary for a system, because that might kind of press a system into thinking, oh my God, this will lead to depression, or this will lead to a really long phase of whatever. Because if you're not resourced to really welcome exiled energy, and you can really be with it and make it feel felt, then it is overwhelming. But if you can, from that burning bright place, that is maybe your shared language, where that inner warmth, or that inner sun that is always there behind the clouds, once we start seeing that inner sun is always there, it was never gone, and that has never been harmed, or there's not a scratch on my soul, let's say. So that inner relating with those overwhelming feelings, that was actually kind of the way that we could really hold intense emotions as well, and not be so scared of intense emotions, knowing we're visiting those emotions, or they're visiting us, and we're not going to live there. We're going to really, find our way together in this world.
So we're really looking at burnout from an IFS lens, with this mixture of the exiled parts of ourselves, those young ones that hold a lot of pain, and the protective parts that keep us going so that we don't go to that pain. And if these protective parts overachieve, then that's when burnout comes in. And then they cannot even read the clock anymore, and we're flooded with all these emotions we've put down for years. Then that's when it becomes not just physically difficult, but also emotionally difficult and overwhelming. And I guess maybe Sarah, Jane, and Scott, maybe you have had similar experiences to, when things just tilt and all of a sudden it's burnout, it's too much.
I'd like to add just here, Indigenous cultures don't have an issue. There are many Indigenous cultures which don't have an issue. I'm not sure the term they use, but the she, he, she, those people, and I don't like to separate them, and I don't know the terminology to use, but people like that, they're almost honored in some Indigenous cultures. They are special within those Indigenous cultures. And yet you've been born into a culture that struggles with it. But I'm listening to what you're saying and thinking, feelings. Oh boy, I buried mine. But there are so many people that have buried their feelings because of things that have happened. So there is so much of your story that people may not understand some of what you're saying because they haven't experienced that. But the feelings side and the burying of feelings, people can get, because things happen in our lives that for me created major insecurities, which they did with you, but they were just totally different things that caused that. Feelings. I struggle with that word love. Because when I was in hospital, And I was a year old, for crying out loud, sort of, I probably did an awful lot of crying too. No, I did a lot of crying. I've been told I did. But my mother would come in, and I saw her once a week for an hour for 3 months.
Oh.
And she would come in and she would pick me up. She said, I would pick you up, I'd cradle you to me, and I'd repeat, I love you, over and over again. Then she'd put me down and walk out again. What does that say to a child? Do you trust that word love? So that leaves an insecurity, that leaves a hole, a massive hole. And you then hear that word, but you don't trust it. So, and I still struggle with it. I care enormously. That's my word. That's the word I can cope with. So we find our way. But then you sort of, I think it was you, Alessio, mentioned about the inner child. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, how is your inner child? Have you managed to work with your inner child? Is your inner child feeling listened to, seen and heard? Because I know I had to work massively with mine.
Yeah.
For my inner child to feel that. And I will go to that quote that I have repeated so many times by Alice Little. As a traumatized child, we were desperately waiting for the adult that would come and save us. What we didn't understand was that it would be ourselves as an adult.
Yeah.
And everything I am listening to here and understanding from a different perspective, but fully understanding what you're saying. Yeah, that aspect within us, each and every one of us, is the important aspect to support us today. And it's just a shame that every culture doesn't acknowledge the fact that we are individuals.
Amen, Sarah. Amen. And yeah, what I love about what you bring is actually this, right? So that's nice about looking at this through an IFS lens, because actually what you're saying, hey, the content really differs. Your story, my story, Scott's story, Alessio's story. So our content differs, but this is true. The way this burnout gets to burn, I don't know if that's the correct English, but how this burnout happens is actually the systemics of it, the internal dynamics is quite similar, right? By really exiling emotions that the system can't deal with. And then what you said, right? Really that inner relating with that inner child. And yes, I do have this cool relationship now with a lot of my young parts, but also my adolescent parts. Oh my God, they're so cool. And so I'm really at this point in my life where I really feel that I'm really at a very slow pace, figuring out what is actually nurturing for me. What are actually the conditions, the terms and conditions that make me thrive. And so I'm really grateful for that internal work that I've been able to do. And I want to, so we can say a lot, especially transgender folks can say a lot about the US right now and its president, and the first day that he came in office and kind of declared people like me non-existent. But Americans can make things work. So what I like about Richard Schwartz, who's the founder of IFS, what he did is magnificent. So I feel that he brought a lot of the everything that works of different types of traditions of wisdom. He brought it together into a protocol that I'm going to say this grand statement that is foolproof. So, okay, this is me overachieving again, but anyway, but it works. So the way that we get trained now through what he kind of figured out in his career is how we can actually help people turn inwards, make a U-turn, turn towards their own internal parts, the parts that are exiled, the parts that are working hard, the parts that want us to party all evening to forget about our pain, or all sorts of parts, and really make them trust our inner leadership. So I'm going to say this, Sara, that I'm not sure, but maybe one day you will get to trust the word love, simply because you've really connected with that child. And my heart breaks when I hear your story of being in a hospital, alienated from your mom so young, right? So if you could turn inward and really be with that child and really come back again and again and really earn the trust of this young one, and tell her every day that you love her from this open space, then I'm not sure I would trust, actually, that one day maybe you'll even trust that word love again.
May I just say that if I were to describe Sarah Jane, it would be someone with the largest heart of anybody I know.
Oh.
She truly is. However you want to describe it, whatever word you want to use, and I use love because I think that's, for me, I define it as the strongest power on earth. That's how I would describe her. You were talking about Richard Schwartz, right? And
yeah,
and IFS. Now, I would really love for the two of you to kind of just explain a little bit about what IFS is to those who are unaware of internal family systems, what it does and how it works, and how people use it, I guess, is my... So if you, I'll leave that to the two of you.
I'm looking at Alessio to step in as my trainer.
Okay, I'll go with that one. I will. Well, so yeah, IFS is this beautiful therapy modality that puts people like me and Anna Thomas in contact, for example, during training. And it's quite a recent type of psychotherapy that regards the psyche as naturally made of different sub personalities that we call parts, and the founder, Dr. Schwartz, kind of categorized different parts, which they seem to go into to follow certain patterns, and we have mentioned some of them, and I think, Sarah Jane, you've put a link to some articles that can be read in my from my website, I believe, but they might be there for later on. But yeah, so there are three main types of parts that we learn about, and we talked about the exiled young ones. In IFS, we have more than one inner child. We have inner children, because we found that when there were traumatic experiences at different points in life, these young parts almost remained stuck in that time and space, holding the pain. Like with you, Sarah Jane, what you described, my sense is that there is a part of you who is stuck, or partly stuck, at that hospital appointment, who lives through the experience of this mother giving mixed signals. I love you, love you, love you, and then off I go. And Anna Thomas has mentioned there, adolescent parts maybe feeling difficulties in the eros aspect, and younger ones around gender, and I could add mine, but it's just for as an example. These are the parts that hold pain, and we don't want, and then we grow up not wanting these parts to be at the surface, because we get told, don't cry, don't be emotional, don't do any of these things that actually heal. So we develop these other parts that we call protectors, who do their best to make sure we never go back to that pain. So, for example, if I may use again your example, Sarah Jane, maybe there is a protective part that says, I don't want to believe the word love, and because that would hurt me if I did.
Yeah.
And people can go and find out more. And Thomas mentioned earlier the two types of protectors, firefighters and managers, but that's more for a reading. But the biggest aspect that I want to name is that the founder also discovered that we can kind of play with the energies of these parts. They can give us space. Technically, they can unblend. And if the protector gives space and the exiles give space, we kind of land into this space of grace and of energy, of love and compassion that we call self with a capital S. And bringing it back to burnout, seen through IFS, there is a way to work and be productive being what we call self-led, that is not dominated by protectors that need to overachieve, or by exiles that feel useless or worthless, and therefore we can be productive without burning out.
Yeah.
Did that sound okay, Scott? As an explanation, it's never easy to explain IFS.
Well, in my limited role, I always taught about parts.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a movie come out with the emotions that came out, and how the emotions took over, and how it really not clouded, but it, depending on what part you were speaking through.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And that movie, what's it called again? But people might know. Frank Anderson is one of the big names also in the IFS world, was actually an advisor on the board for that movie to help. Inside Out. Yeah. So that was actually in collaboration with people from the IFS world. So that is a great reference, Scott, to mention Inside Out.
And by the way, it may be animation for those listening. Inside Out may be animation, but it is clearly for adults. It really, really, really is for adults. It simplifies things so much so that even an adult can understand it.
I love that. Yeah. And what I want to add to what Alessio just said, right? So this facilitation that we do between self and parts, the effect will be choice. That's that to me. So we work with a lot of C's in IFS: compassion, confidence, courage, etc. But choice is so to have choice in every moment. And that's what I start feeling when I really feel connected to self. Then I really feel that I do have choice. I can listen to all my thinking parts. I can listen to all my exiled parts that kind of stir up, or my protector parts. And I really still feel choice, because I'll say, hey, okay, this is quite an activating situation right now. I can really feel that I feel shy, or I feel overwhelmed, or I feel whatever. But so the effect of this therapy modality is that you'll have choice at the end of that internal relationship that you're building with your parts. So my boundary repertoire becomes very natural. So my no's become very trustworthy, because I feel my no's, and I feel my yeses, and I feel my maybes, and I really grant myself and the other person to really figure things out, right? So kind of consent becomes a very natural thing to explore with myself. Internal consent, do I get a yes on this? Or, oh, I'm getting mixed feelings around this. And to very naturally also check with the other person, hey, are you really on board? Because this was a very quick yes, and I don't really trust quick yeses. Could you check for, double check for me whether you're really saying yes here? Because I don't want to cross any boundaries in you. So it kind of tends. So this is my experience. IFS also tends to slow your life down, and it becomes, you start really living while alive. But yeah, this is my experience, that it really slows things down.
And can I go? I've got something to say. I'm going to add something.
You're next.
Because there's something that we were chatting, coming in preparation for this program, and as you mentioned choice, I was here in admiration of how you chose to say something about the way the show was opened, about the ladies and gentlemen, and how as a result of working with your parts and through IFS, things impact you differently. And whereas before, this would have hit, a profound wound that would have been flooded, or maybe because of the pain, there would have been like a manager that would have come with a bit of a kind of blunt way. You felt empowered and choiceful and calm and said, hey, this is my experience. And that was a beautiful way that I witnessed of how maybe you've grown through IFS.
Yay! and actually, not to turn this into the society of mutual appreciation, but it definitely is a society of mutual appreciation between Alessio and me, and now between me and all of you. But this is what you promised me back in Portugal when I got my level 1 training. And this is where I was very flooded and very overwhelmed and very hurt when this type of thing happens every day in our grammar, in the way we are trained. This is how language still is for many people, not our younger ones. They're very fluent in pronouns, but and you promised me in Ericeira, Portugal, that the outside world would have less impact. I really did not. Part of me really did not believe you. And I like that we're now harvesting, and that you are my witness again, that it's actually true, that deepening your internal relationship with the many inner children actually works. So yeah. And I want to slow down because I also want to do justice to the audience and check with you three. So if we promised people burnout seen through an IFS lens, have we explained enough that what Alessio just said, right? So these manager parts, these achieving parts that want to keep us safe, that they are usually the ones that get depleted. And that in my case, there was this firefighter that kind of stopped the whole system. Hey, we're done. You're not going to stop. These managers aren't going to stop by themselves. So I'll stop you. And then working with all that exile material, really, this is, poster child of IFS. But do you feel that we've addressed that enough? Or is there more that we could explore together? Maybe also from the chapters that you've been writing for that burning out to burning bright.
Sara?
I'd like to add here at the moment, choice. We all have choice. I worked with adult learning difficulties for a while. And it was about, rather than being dictated to because they were when I was a child, it was called mentally handicapped. Now it's called neurodiversity, because obviously the terminology has had to change. But it's so now about, rather than being dictated to of what they had to do because they haven't got the mental capacity to do, just Now it's about offering choice. You talked about the saying yes, the saying no, the saying maybe. How many conversations have we had about this, Scott, on different programs that we've done about, learning to have the confidence to say no to people, because when we say yes to others, how many times are we saying no to ourselves? About saying, when somebody asks you something, about saying, can I have time to think about that? Can I have a time to check my diary? Whatever it is. I'm listening to what you're saying, which is obviously really important for you, but you know what? It's important for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. And the insecurities within our lives, wherever they come from, they do cause burnout. But is that our wake-up call? Our life quake is a term I've sort of heard used, and I think it's brilliant. It's that thing that wakes us up to become true to ourself, whatever that self is for each individual. And I've been through it. Scott's been through it. Alessio's been through it. You've been through it. We've been through it. And we've managed to come out the other side stronger because of, I suppose, if you like, an awareness, an opening to, I'm going to say it, an alternative way of being from the insecurities that we had and the fear of, I didn't even know who I was. I didn't have a fear of it. It was just because of the age I was when it all happened. I have no understanding of who I was. And what you're talking about, to me, what I'm hearing is it's a way of helping each individual to be themselves, to be in touch with themselves, to be comfortable with who they are. That's the important thing. Scott?
In one of the modalities that I learned, we talked about the cave of the lost children. And it's where those parts of ourselves that are kind of hidden away, that they only come out every once in a while when they're triggered, and they come up. And there are times, and we talk about choice, and the choice is to either speak through that 7-year-old, 9-year-old, 17-year-old self, or to speak through who we are now, because they come up and they're only there to protect us. Those parts of us that come up, because it's how we learned how to survive when we were 3, when we were 8, when we were 15. We had those ways of being to be able to protect us. But now that I'm well over 60, I don't need to speak through my 13-year-old self or my 18-year-old self. I can now speak through the learned part of who I am. And there is another part of that, and that is acceptance. Sarah and I just had a very long discussion about forgiveness, about self-forgiveness, about how knowing to forgive ourselves for things we look back and, we all have those things of, why did I do that? But, hindsight being 2020, we would have made different choices knowing later on how it was going to work out. But in those moments that we made those decisions, we had X amount of information, capacity, resources in order to make the best decision back then. And so giving ourselves the ability to forgive those aspects and be able to deal with them. And I find in dealing with clients especially that acknowledging those aspects of us, those younger aspects of us, there are people I know that still behave as if they're 7 years old when they get mad, and they throw things, and then they slam doors and they walk out and they stamp their feet. And, they're well into their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they still act that way. But it is a choice. It's what they learned when they were younger. They got their way. And so it just kind of perpetrated. So it's always interesting how our younger selves affect us later in life, and how we learn socialization, the rules, and how to manipulate them through our different aspects. And so I really want to thank you both for bringing IFS forward like this. I encourage anyone watching and listening to this program to be able to look at it further, because there are so many. It's in and of itself, it's fairly complex, and there's a lot of parts to it. But broken down, such as in the movie Inside Out, it's pretty fairly simple about, oh, I see that part. I don't have to speak through it. Thank you for helping me. I'm not going to yell at this person, but I am going to talk through my 60-year-old self to be able to work through this. And it's really interesting how you guys have brought this forward. And Anna Thomas, I love your story. I absolutely love the story that you're able to tell it now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a vulnerability, there's a courage, there is a understanding there that is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for that, because it's the voices out there that people will hear that they haven't heard before. It's those people, Alessio, in your story, in your chapter that you wrote about how it affected you, how all of this affected you, how, and bringing that up encourages others. They don't feel so alone. They don't feel so isolated. They don't feel so just inhibited, that there is somebody else that has been through that, and they see the two of you and they say, wow, I want to be like them. And it's hard work that you did to be able to get to the point where you are. And I encourage it and really enjoy the story and how you brought it forward.
Thank you. That's really touching to my heart. And I want to second what you just said, Scott, about Alessio's chapter in that book, and the other chapters, because I've been reading more chapters of the Burnout to Burning Bright book. And what I so loved about the chapters and the contributions is that it wasn't sugar coated at all. It was very real. It was very up to the details that we would only trust to our journals, right? But now it's published and people can recognize their darkest thoughts, their most awkward parts, or their most shameful thoughts, and see how you can move through it. And I really want to pay that compliment to you as the ones who created this beautiful book.
Thank you. I pushed some of the co-authors were a little angry with me. I kept asking for more, for personal. One woman wrote her story 5 times because I kept asking her, where are you in this story? She was telling a story about her son, but it was about her. And I kept asking her, where are you? And she wrote just a stunning chapter. And it's much like the journey that you went through. It's about, I got to tell my story. I got to tell about me. And that's, I don't know about it. If you, for any of you that are writers, by the way, out there, first time I wrote, I was scared to death. None of the millions of people that could read it. It was for those closest to me, because they knew me. And that scared me more than anything, to be able to be vulnerable and have those people who knew me read this. So that vulnerability is really important.
We're coming towards the close of the program. And so what I'd like to do, especially with Alessio and Anna Thomas, is there anything that we haven't touched on? Any final thoughts that you would like to add before we finish, please? I don't know, You choose which one of you wants to go first.
Well, if I may, I did, listening to you, Scott, what came to mind is how we had this beautiful hour of really talking about burnout at the individual level, right? How that happens and how we move through it. And what I love about IFS, it's not just about individual healing, it's also really an invitation for collective healing. So it really identifies materialism, racism, sexism, all the isms as kind of burdening our systems, and to raise awareness to the systems that we live in. And we can't really, you can't really change the world, but still we can change the world by raising our awareness as well. So somehow I feel we also, as a group, maybe contribute to collective healing, right? To really be here with our parts and our stories, and how we got alienated from ourselves, but also how this culture kind of invites getting alienated from yourself. So for people who are interested in IFS, this is also the promise. It's not just about healing at an individual level. It's really also about, really raising our awareness to power dynamics, our social locations, and where we have privilege. And I do also have privilege, that we can open doors for others and to really kind of support collective healing as well.
Thank you, Alessio.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just want to add that, IFS is a beautiful gift that we have, and, it can be very powerful just to read through what things are, and to really, if there is any curiosity, just to go and find out more, and that we don't have to go to do this very difficult thing with the exiles. Sometimes we can do beautiful pieces of healing just by understanding our protective mechanism and really respecting that and realizing that there is this sense of who we are behind all of it. So it's really, I think it's full of hope really for the individual and the world, and we need a lot of that at the moment.
Right. Yes, we do.
Bless you. Thank you. Scott, have you got any final words you'd like to share?
Just really want to say thank you to Dr. Anna Thomas and to Alessio for bringing this forward. I think I would love to encourage anyone to look it up and to connect with them if possible. They are both who you saw. They are that healing, that vulnerable, that caring.
Thank you.
I have put, Alessio talked about a link to learn more about IFS. That's in the chat. So is the link to Anna Thomas's website. If you're watching this on YouTube, I am going to make sure that those links are underneath the video on YouTube as well as the rest of our websites. Please, if anything here has spoken to you, has touched you, and you wish to do further investigation, check out the website we've shared beneath this video. That's why we do this. And if you wish to connect with any of us, please do. You can through our contact pages. That's why we do this, to support you. And I hope that what has been shared here tonight, because tonight for me, is that you'll be open and truly listen to what has been said. Because sometimes it can be very easy to listen on the surface, listen to the deeper. Because there is so much support here for everyone. There is no limitation, discrimination. It's support for everyone. So thank you to each and every one of you. And next week, I'm being joined by Dorian Delorier, which you might be aware of, Scott. And And Dorian has recently written a book, Awaken to Life in a Meat Suit. How our beliefs create our reality, healing trauma, awakening consciousness, and finding our way home. So I hope you'll consider joining us for that one. I have the feeling that's going to be a very interesting conversation with Dorian. Take care, folks. Be safe. Stay well. It's been a real pleasure to have all of you and speak with you this evening. Thank you. Namaste, sweet souls. Bye.